The Galactic Military Academy stood as a testament to the universe's greatest achievement in unified defense forces. Or at least, that's what the brochure claimed. Rook Jang couldn't help but snort as he read the pamphlet for the 100th time, sitting in the orientation hall alongside 30 other human cadets and about 300 aliens of various species. "And here we have the first batch of humans joining our prestigious institution," announced Dean Xylax, his forearms gesturing dramatically while his crystalline body structure caught the light in ways that made Rook's eyes hurt. "We welcome Earth's finest to join the ranks of the Galactic Defense Force." Rook glanced around at his fellow human cadets, catching more than a few rolling their eyes. Earth's finest? More like Earth's most expendable. They all knew why they were really here. Humanity needed to prove itself worthy of galactic citizenship. And they were the guinea pigs. The Academy itself was a massive structure floating in space, connected to various training facilities through quantum tunnels. It looked like someone had taken every sci-fi movie ever made, thrown them in a blender, and built whatever came out. The architecture was a mess of organic curves and geometric patterns that somehow worked together, probably because aliens had different aesthetic sensibilities, or no sense of aesthetic at all. "Humans," rumbled a voice behind Rook. "Such soft creatures, no scales, no armor, not even a decent set of claws." Rook turned to find himself face to chest with a Drachnid cadet. The reptilian alien towered over him, its scales shimmering with an iridescent purple that probably cost more than Rook's entire education. Classic rich kid syndrome transcended species, apparently. "Yeah, we're practically naked," Rook replied cheerfully. "Makes it easier to slip past your defenses and steal your lunch money." A few nearby human cadets snickered, while the Drachnid's tail lashed in confusion. Humor, Rook had quickly learned, was another one of those things that didn't translate well across species. The orientation droned on, with various instructors introducing themselves and their subjects. Combat training, xenopolitics, quantum engineering, psychic defense, which humans were apparently exempt from, lacking any psychic abilities, and something called harmonious integration, which sounded suspiciously like a PR class. The hierarchy was clear. The older species, those who'd been part of the Galactic Alliance for millennia, got the best quarters, the best equipment, and the best opportunities. Newer species got what was left, and humans, being the newest, got whatever was at the bottom of the barrel. "Remember," Dean Xylax concluded, his crystalline form pulsing with what Rook assumed was enthusiasm, "you are all now part of the most elite military training program in the known universe. Act accordingly." "Translation, don't embarrass your species," muttered Rook's fellow human cadet next to him. "No pressure or anything." Rook grinned. If there was one thing humans were good at, it was causing chaos in highly structured environments. This was going to be an interesting year. Combat training was easily everyone's favorite class, if only because it provided a legitimate excuse to hit things. The massive training hall could simulate any environment, from low-gravity asteroid fields to high-pressure ocean floors. Today it was set to standard Earth gravity, a small courtesy that made Rook immediately suspicious. "Today," announced Combat Master Craxix, "we evaluate your hand-to-hand combat skills." The Warlord's massive frame dominated the training area. Unlike most instructors who were retired military, Craxix was an active-duty warlord who taught for fun. His species, the Vrakati, were living tanks, thick armor plates, redundant organs, and a natural affinity for violence that made them the galaxy's preferred shock troops. "I've reviewed your species' combat capabilities," Craxix continued, his voice like gravel in a garbage disposal. "Most impressive, considering your obvious limitations." His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a Vrakathi expression of condescension. The class paired off for sparring, with Rook finding himself matched against a Centaurian, basically a 4-armed praying mantis with anger management issues. He was holding his own pretty well, until Craxix's voice boomed across the hall. "Pathetic! Is this what humans call fighting?" The Warlord was standing over two other human cadets who had been sparring. "You rely too much on your supposed agility. Real combat requires power." To demonstrate his point, Craxix grabbed a training dummy and crushed it with one hand. The dummy, designed to withstand the strength of most species, crumpled like paper. "With respect, sir," Rook found himself saying before his brain could stop his mouth, "power isn't everything in a fight." The training hall went silent. Even the environmental controls seemed to hold their breath. Craxix turned slowly, all four eyes fixing on Rook. "Explain yourself, Cadet." "Well," Rook continued, figuring he was already in trouble, "humans have survived countless wars without natural armor or overwhelming strength. We're good at finding ways to win that don't involve raw power." "Ah, yes, your species' famous adaptability," Craxix sneered. "Tell me, human, how would you adapt to fighting someone like me?" "Probably start by asking if you'd like to grab a drink instead," Rook quipped. "Violence should be the last resort, right? That's in the Academy Handbook, page 394. A few cadets chuckled, quickly silenced by Craxix's glare. "You quote regulations to avoid combat? Perhaps humans are even more cowardly than I thought." "Not avoiding," Rook corrected, maintaining a pleasant smile that he knew drove certain species crazy. "Just suggesting alternatives. But if you're really curious about human combat capabilities, I'm happy to demonstrate." The Warlord's armor plates shifted, the Vrakathi equivalent of raising an eyebrow. "Are you challenging me, Cadet?" "Not at all, sir. That would be against regulations. I'm merely offering to participate in an educational demonstration. For the benefit of the class, of course." Craxix's laugh sounded like rocks in a tumbler. "Very well. Tomorrow, in this hall, we will have an educational demonstration. The entire Academy will witness how humans fare against real warriors." "Sounds fun," Rook replied cheerfully. "Should I bring snacks?" As the class dispersed, whispers already spreading through the Academy's neural networks, Rook's Centaurian sparring partner chittered nervously. "You do realize he has never lost a combat demonstration? Several cadets have required extensive medical regeneration." "Really?" Rook grinned. "Then it's about time someone taught him a new lesson." Walking back to the human quarters, Rook wondered if he'd finally let his mouth write a check his body couldn't cash. But seeing Craxix bully those cadets had triggered something. That uniquely human instinct to poke the biggest bear in the room, just to see what would happen. Besides, he had a plan. Well, the beginning of a plan. Okay, he had several terrible ideas that might get him killed, but those were basically the same thing, right? Preparing to fight a Vrakathi warlord turned out to be exactly as difficult as you'd expect. Rook spent his evening in the Academy's database, studying everything he could about their species, which wasn't much, since most of the good stuff was classified. "You're actually researching," his roommate Liu commented, watching Rook sift through holographic data. "I thought you'd be writing your will." "Already did that. Left you my collection of Earth memes. They'll be vintage out here." Rook paused at an interesting file. "Hey, did you know Vrakathi armor plates are sensitive to sonic frequencies?" "Great. Too bad you didn't pack your heavy metal collection." The Academy was buzzing with news of the challenge. Betting pools had sprung up, with odds heavily favoring Craxix, something like 500 to 1. Rook was tempted to bet on himself just for the potential payout. During breakfast, a Meridian approached their table. Think, sentient rainbow with too many eyes. "I've analyzed your species' combat data," it said, colors swirling anxiously. "Your only statistical advantage is that humans are technically classified as an endurance predator." "Thanks for the vote of confidence," Rook mumbled through his nutrient paste. Apparently, real food was another privilege they hadn't earned yet. The training room was booked solid, but Rook managed to snag some time in the low-grav chamber. He wasn't practicing combat moves. Instead, he was doing something that made the other cadets stare in confusion. He was dancing. "Has the impending doom damaged your neural functions?" asked his Centaurian sparring partner, watching Rook move through what looked like a mix of capoeira and breakdancing. Nope. Just remembering that humans have something most species don't: rhythm. Rook spun in a perfect headspin, using the low gravity to extend the move. Also, we're really good at looking like we have no idea what we're doing. Word of the challenge had reached the administrative level, causing quite a stir. Several instructors tried to talk Rook out of it, citing concerns about interspecies relations and potential diplomatic incidents. If a training demonstration damages diplomatic relations, Rook pointed out, maybe the relations weren't that great to begin with. The Academy board was split. Some wanted to cancel the match, worried about human fragility. Others saw it as a perfect opportunity to put the newcomers in their place. In the end, they decided to let it proceed, officially classifying it as a cross-cultural exchange exercise. During his research, Rook discovered something interesting. Vrakathi armor plates weren't just sensitive to sound. They were part of their balance system. Like inner ears for humans, but external and more complex. A weakness disguised as strength, just like their rigid adherence to traditional combat forms. His fellow human cadets were surprisingly supportive, in their own way. "If you die, can I have your dessert rations?" one asked. "Betting my entire monthly stipend on crack six," said another. "Don't take it personally. I'm just being realistic." "I believe in you," Liu told him. "I mean, I think you're completely insane, but I believe in your insanity." The evening before the match, Rook received an unexpected visitor, Dean Zylax himself. The crystalline administrator's form was pulsing with worried colors. "Cadet Zhang, there's still time to withdraw. No one would think less of you." "With respect, sir, they already think less of us. Might as well give them something new to think about." The Dean's crystals chimed softly, their version of a sigh. "Your species' propensity for charging into impossible situations is concerning." "It's worked out pretty well for us so far," Rook grinned. "Besides, impossible is just another word for hasn't been done yet." As he prepared for bed, following his usual routine like tomorrow wasn't going to be potentially his last day, Rook felt surprisingly calm. He had a plan, backup plans, and several really stupid ideas that just might work. Most importantly, he had nothing to lose, except maybe all those betting odds against him. "Time to show them what humans can do," he muttered to himself. "Let's make it interesting at least." The training hall had been transformed overnight into something resembling a gladiatorial arena, complete with elevated viewing platforms for the spectators. The environmental controls were set to standard Earth gravity, a detail that made Rook smile. They were trying to be fair, not realizing they'd just given him an advantage. "Someone's feeling theatrical," he muttered, noting the holographic displays showing close-ups of the combat area. The entire academy had shown up, with species segregating themselves into distinct color-coded sections, like some cosmic high school cafeteria. The human cadets occupied the smallest section, but were making up for it by being the loudest. Dean Zylax floated to the center of the arena, his crystalline form refracting the lights in dazzling patterns. "This educational demonstration will follow standard academy combat protocols," he announced, his voice amplified through the hall's acoustic system. "Victory is achieved through submission, incapacitation, or—" He paused dramatically. "Ring out." Rook studied the glowing boundary lines. 15 meters in diameter, plenty of room to move. Cracksix entered from the opposite side, his armor plates gleaming under the lights. He'd polished them for the occasion, making them even more sensitive to vibration. Perfect. "Last chance to withdraw, human," the warlord rumbled, performing a series of warm-up moves that made his armor ripple impressively. Several cadets in the audience swooned. Apparently, Vrakathi warriors had groupies. Who knew? And missed this party. I even dressed up. Rook gestured to his standard-issue training uniform, which he'd accessorized with absolutely nothing. "Besides, I hear you give great hugs." A regulation officer stepped forward, looking nervous. "Combatants will refrain from lethal techniques. Medical units are standing by, but we'd prefer not to use them." "No promises," Craxix growled, his armor plates flexing in what Rook recognized as a threat display. "Don't worry," Rook called out cheerfully. "I'll be gentle with him." The audience erupted in a mixture of laughs, gasps, and what sounded like mating calls from one particularly excited section. Gambling odds were still updating on the holographic displays, now at 750 to 1 against Rook. He really should have placed that bet. As the regulation officer retreated, Craxix leaned forward. "Your species' false bravado cannot hide your fear, Cadet. I can smell it." "That's just my new cologne. Eau de bad decisions. Like it?" The starting signal could not come soon enough. The starting tone resonated through the arena, and Craxix charged forward like a freight train made of angry armor plates. It was the obvious move. Why waste time with fancy footwork when you could simply steamroll your opponent? Rook waited until the last possible moment before moving. Not diving, not rolling, but dancing. He smoothly slid aside with a move straight out of a Terran breakdancing competition, complete with a little spin that put him behind the Warlord. "Ole!" Rook called out, unable to resist. The human section of the audience burst out laughing, while the other species looked confused, probably wondering if this was a legitimate combat technique. Craxix spun around with surprising speed for someone his size. "Stop dancing and fight!" "I am fighting. Just because it looks good doesn't mean it's not effective." Rook continued moving, his footwork following a rhythm only he could hear. Each step, each movement was calculated to look random while following a very specific pattern. The Warlord launched a series of devastating strikes, each one capable of ending the fight instantly if it connected. But Rook kept moving, flowing around the attacks like water around rocks. He added unnecessary flourishes, a spin here, a wave there, making it look like he was putting on a show rather than fighting for his life. "Your mockery dishonors this combat," Craxix roared, his armor plates bristling with rage. "Not mockery, strategy. Also, this is just how humans move. We're bouncy." To demonstrate, Rook performed a perfect backflip over a low sweep, landing with a little shimmy that made several audience members trill in appreciation. The crowd's reaction was shifting. What started as anticipation for a quick, brutal demonstration had turned into confusion, then entertainment, and now genuine interest. The betting odds were starting to change. Craxix's attacks were getting faster, but less controlled. His armor plates were vibrating with fury and something else. Each time Rook moved past him, he hummed a different note, too quiet for the audience to hear, but just loud enough to resonate with those sensitive plates. Hold still and accept your defeat. The Warlord's movements were becoming erratic. His perfectly practiced combat forms were degrading into increasingly desperate attacks. "You know," Rook said conversationally, ducking under a punch that would have taken his head off, "humans have this thing called rhythm. It's pretty important in fighting." He started adding vocal percussion to his movements, quiet beatboxing that made Craxix's armor twitch involuntarily. The Warlord stumbled, his legendary balance wavering for the first time. The audience gasped. Nobody had ever seen a Vrakathi warrior lose their footing in combat. "What? What are you doing?" Craxix demanded, trying to regain his composure. "Teaching," Rook replied with a grin. "This is an educational demonstration, remember?" He launched into a series of moves that looked like a cross between capoeira and pop and lock, each movement accompanied by a carefully pitched hum or beat. Craxix's armor plates were now vibrating visibly, trying to compensate for frequencies they were never designed to handle. The mighty Warlord took a step back for the first time in the fight. The arena was dead silent, except for the sound of Rook's impromptu percussion performance and the increasing rattle of Vrakathi armor plates. The betting odds had shifted to 50 to 1, still against Rook, but significantly better than where they'd started. "Ready for round 2?" Rook asked, settling into a stance that looked casual but was anything but. "Because this is where it gets interesting." The look of confusion and dawning concern on Craxix's face was worth every bruise Rook would definitely be feeling tomorrow. Kraxix steadied himself, his military training kicking in to compensate for the disorientation. "Your sonic tricks won't save you forever, human." "Sonic tricks? No. This is just me warming up for my Galactic Talent Show audition." Rook started moving in a new pattern, this time incorporating what looked suspiciously like the Macarena. "Did you know humans have thousands of dance styles, each with its own rhythm, its own vibration?" The warlord charged again, but this time with a modification to his armor plates. They were vibrating at a counter-frequency, trying to neutralize Rook's sonic assault. "Adaptive armor," he growled triumphantly. "Your strategy has failed." "Actually," Rook grinned, switching to a completely different rhythm, "I was counting on that." The counter-frequency, designed to match Rook's previous pattern, now clashed horribly with his new one. It was like trying to play two songs at once, in different keys, at different speeds. Kraxix's armor went haywire, plates clashing against each other in a cacophony of military-grade confusion. "The thing about humans," Rook continued, now incorporating moves from what appeared to be a K-pop dance routine, "is that we're really, really good at being unpredictable. It's like our superpower." The audience was completely entranced. The betting odds had shifted to 5-1, and more than a few cadets were recording the fight, probably for future blackmail material. "You cannot win with dance moves," Kraxix bellowed, trying to maintain his fearsome image despite looking like a malfunctioning robot at a disco. "Why not? The universe is basically just atoms dancing anyway. Physics is all about rhythm and vibration. Even your armor," Rook switched to what was definitely staying alive moves, "is just trying to dance along." Kraxix's next attack was desperate, a full-body charge that would have pulverized Rook if it had connected. Instead, Rook dropped into a perfect split, slid under the warlord's legs, and popped up behind him with a spin that sent targeted vibrations through the floor. The mighty Vrakathi warrior stumbled again, this time nearly falling. His armor plates were a symphony of chaos, each one trying to compensate for different frequencies and failing spectacularly. "Getting dizzy?" Rook asked sympathetically. "That's what happens when you try to counter every move instead of going with the flow. Humans learned this lesson through millions of terrible dance parties." The crowd was no longer segregated by species. They had unconsciously started moving together, swaying to the rhythm Rook was creating. Even some of the instructors were tapping their various appendages. "This is not combat," Kraxix protested, his legendary composure completely shattered. This is art? Entertainment? Physical poetry? Why can't it be all of those things?" Rook's movements became more fluid, more hypnotic. "Combat isn't just about power or technique. Sometimes it's about making your opponent question their entire worldview." That was the final straw. Kraxix's armor, trying to adapt to too many patterns at once, locked up completely. The mighty warlord stood frozen, his body trapped in a crystalline prison of his own adaptive technology. "Would you like to know the best part?" Rook asked, casually moonwalking around his immobilized opponent. "I'm actually a terrible dancer. This is just what humans look like when we're having fun." The betting odds flipped to 2-1 in Rook's favor, marking a historic first in Academy combat demonstrations. "Time to end this," Rook announced, starting a slow walk around the immobilized warlord. But first, a quick physics lesson for the class. What happens when you take a complex system of vibrating plates and introduce— He paused dramatically. "Complete silence?" The entire arena held its breath. Kraxix's eyes widened in realization. "You wouldn't dare." "Oh, but I would." Rook stopped his rhythmic movements abruptly. The sudden cessation of sound was like a physical presence in the arena. Kraxix's armor plates, still trying to compensate for frequencies that no longer existed, went into complete overdrive. "By the way," Rook added cheerfully, "did you know humans can snap their fingers really, really loudly?" "Snap!" The sound cracked through the air like a gunshot. Kraxix's armor plates seized up completely, then began to shudder violently. The mighty warlord spun around helplessly, his own defensive systems turned against him. And for my final trick—" Rook took a deep breath and unleashed his secret weapon. He started whistling the most annoying tune in human history, Baby Shark. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. Craxix's armor went into full meltdown mode, plates vibrating at different frequencies, creating a discordant symphony of chaos. The warlord pirouetted involuntarily, his fearsome appearance completely undermined by the fact that he was essentially being forced to dance by his own armor. "Make it stop!" Craxix pleaded, his voice modulating wildly as his armor continued its rebellion. "Sorry, can't hear you over the sound of victory," Rook called back, still whistling. He added a little soft shoe routine just for good measure. The mighty warlord made one last attempt to charge, but his armor had other ideas. Instead of the fearsome rush he intended, he executed what looked remarkably like a perfect pirouette, spun 3 times, and collapsed in a heap at the edge of the ring. The boundary line flashed red. Ring out. The arena exploded into chaos. The betting systems crashed from the sudden flood of payouts. Several alien species began mimicking Rook's dance moves, creating what might have been the galaxy's first impromptu dance party in a combat arena. Rook walked over to the fallen warlord and offered a hand. "Great fight! You really kept me on my toes, literally." Craxix stared at the offered hand, then at Rook, then back at the hand. Finally he let out a sound that might have been a laugh or a malfunction. "You turned my greatest strength into a dance costume. If it helps, you've got great rhythm for someone who's never danced before." Rook helped the warlord up. "Those spins at the end? Solid 8 out of 10? The medical team rushed forward, then stopped, confused by the sight of the 2 competitors standing together, apparently chatting about dance technique. Dean Zylax floated down, his crystalline form flickering with what might have been amusement. "I believe this concludes our educational demonstration. Would either combatant care to share what we've learned today?" "Never underestimate species that evolved on high-gravity death worlds," Rook suggested. "Always check if your opponent is secretly a dance instructor," Craxix added, surprising everyone with what appeared to be actual humour. "Close enough," the Dean chimed. "Dismissed." As they left the arena, Craxix turned to Rook. "You knew about the armor's frequency sensitivity from the beginning." "Yep." "Found it in the public database. Amazing what you can learn when you actually do the reading. You could have ended it much sooner." "Yeah, but then we wouldn't have given everyone such a good show." Rook grinned. "Besides, you're the first alien I've met who can pull off an involuntary robot dance move that well." The next day at the Academy dawned with a distinctly different atmosphere. For one thing, several alien species had discovered human music archives and were attempting to recreate Rook's moves in the corridors between classes. "You've created monsters," Liu commented, watching a group of Meridians attempting to breakdance. Their rainbow forms created interesting light patterns as they spun, though the smoking scorch marks on the floor suggested they needed more practice. The combat training class had changed dramatically. Craxix, still occasionally twitching from residual vibrations, had revised his entire teaching approach. "Combat is more than brute force," he announced to the shocked class. "Today we study adaptability and unconventional tactics." He glanced at Rook. "No dancing unless absolutely necessary." The betting payouts had redistributed the entire semester's worth of student credits. Several of the humans who'd bet on Rook were now the richest cadets in the academy. The administrative board was seriously considering banning gambling right after they collected their own winnings. "Your species continues to surprise us," Dean Zylax told Rook during a special commendation ceremony, "though perhaps we should have expected it. Any species that invented both nuclear physics and the chicken dance clearly operates on a different level." The most significant change was in the dining hall. The species segregation had dissolved almost overnight. Now cadets mixed freely, exchanging stories, comparing combat techniques, and occasionally breaking into impromptu dance battles. "Did you really plan all this?" a Centaurian asked Rook over lunch. "The cultural integration, the breaking down of prejudices?" Nah, Rook admitted, enjoying his newly upgraded meal privileges. I just wanted to prove that humans could hold their own. The dance party was a bonus. The Academy's training protocols were being revised to include what was now officially called adaptive combat techniques. Unofficially, everyone called it the human shuffle. Even the Drachnid who'd mocked humans on the first day had changed his tune. Your lack of natural defenses, he admitted to Rook, is perhaps compensated by your ability to turn anything into a weapon, even terrible music. The combat demonstration video had somehow leaked to the Galactic Network. Now other military academies were requesting human instructors, particularly those skilled in rhythmic combat applications. Cracksix, to everyone's surprise, became one of the strongest advocates for human integration into the Galactic Defense Force. They think differently, he explained to his fellow instructors. In a universe of predictable threats, unpredictability might be our greatest asset. During the end-of-term evaluations, Rook was called into the Dean's office. Your methods were unorthodox, Xylax chimed, but they achieved something we've been attempting for centuries, genuine cross-species cooperation. All it took was making a warlord dance, Rook shrugged. Who knew? We're considering making your demonstration a regular event, though perhaps with less betting this time. Sir, Rook grinned, I think that would be an excellent addition to the curriculum. Just don't tell anyone about the baby shark thing. We need to keep some secrets. As he left the office, Rook passed a group of first-year cadets practicing what looked suspiciously like the Macarena. Times were definitely changing at the Galactic Military Academy. And somewhere in the vast database of Academy records, a new entry appeared. Human combat techniques, approach with caution, may include unexpected rhythmic elements. Warning, baby shark classified as Class 3 sonic weapon. The universe, it seemed, would never underestimate dancing humans again.